Even after 10 years, Loretta's voice still had the power to make the room feel colder. "Mara, darling, is that you?" The familiar, crisp tone sliced through the chatter of the salon, sending a shiver down my spine. I turned to face my former mother-in-law, her perfectly coiffed hair and tailored suit, a jarring contrast to the casual atmosphere. "Loretta," I managed, my throat tightening. "What are you doing here?" Her eyes narrowed, scanning me with disdain. "Is that any way to greet family? Especially after all this time." She pursed her lips, ignoring the curious stares from the other stylists and clients. I fought the urge to recoil, steadying my voice. "We both know you never considered me family." Loretta waved a dismissive hand. "Water under the bridge, my dear. I'm actually here because I need your help." Her gaze flickered with something I couldn't quite place. "It's about Eli." My ex-husband's name hit me like a punch to the gut. I hadn't spoken to him in nearly a decade, not since Loretta orchestrated our bitter separation shortly after Avery's birth, cutting me off from my own daughter. "You have some nerve," I said through gritted teeth. "After everything you put me through, everything you cost me." "Please, Mara." Loretta's tone softened, but her eyes remained steely. "This isn't about the past, it's about Avery." My heart clenched at the mention of my little girl, now a young woman I barely knew thanks to Loretta's machinations. I opened my mouth, but the words stuck in my throat. Loretta leaned closer, her voice lowering. "Eli's in trouble, deeper than I can handle alone, and my health." She trailed off, a rare vulnerability flickering across her features. I studied her for a long moment, 1,000 memories and recriminations swirling in my mind. Part of me wanted to turn away, to sever the last thread tying me to that toxic family. But the thought of Avery, caught in the crossfire of whatever drama Loretta had woven, tugged at my heart. Finally, I exhaled a long breath. "All right, Loretta, I'll hear you out, but I'm not making any promises." A ghost of a smile played across her lips, and for a fleeting instant I saw the same calculating glint that had haunted me for years. "Of course, dear. That's all I ask." As Loretta slid into the chair across from me at the cafe, I steeled myself for whatever bombshell she was about to drop. Her perfectly manicured nails drummed against the table, a nervous tic I recognized from our past encounters. "I don't have much time to mince words, Mara," she began, her voice lowered to a conspiratorial tone. "Eli's in deep trouble, and it's all my fault." I tensed at the mention of my ex-husband's name, memories of our toxic marriage flooding back. "What did you do this time, Loretta?" She bristled at my accusatory tone. "Don't take that tone with me, young lady. I'm trying to make things right." Her brow furrowed, and for a moment she looked every bit her age. "Eli's gambling addiction has spiraled out of control. He's racked up debts with some unsavory characters, and they're threatening to come after Avery if he doesn't pay up." A chill ran down my spine. My own daughter, caught up in the mess Loretta had created. Why should I believe a word you say? I shot back, my voice sharpened by years of pent-up anger. "You've done nothing but manipulate and lie since the day we met." Loretta recoiled as if I'd slapped her. "You think I wanted any of this?" she hissed. "I tried to mold him into the man this family needed, but he was weak, just like his father. This is the price of my failure as a mother." I scoffed, shaking my head in disbelief. "Failure as a mother? You drove a wedge between us from the start, Loretta. You never gave our marriage a chance because you couldn't stand the thought of not being in control." Her eyes flashed with fury, but she remained silent, her lips pressed into a thin line. In that moment, I saw the truth laid bare. Her selfish need for power had destroyed not just my life, but her own son's as well. "You threw me out when I needed family the most," I continued, my voice thick with emotion. "What could you possibly want now?" Loretta's gaze dropped, and for a long moment she said nothing. Finally, she met my eyes, her own brimming with unshed tears. "I want to make it right, Mara, for Avery's sake, if nothing else." I studied her closely, searching for any hint of deception, but behind the poise and arrogance, I saw only a broken woman, grasping at one last chance to salvage something from the wreckage she'd created. "What did you have in mind?" I asked cautiously, silently bracing myself for whatever new manipulation she had up her sleeve. Loretta took a deep breath, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the tabletop. "I want you to come live with us, Mara. Be the stabilizing force Eli and Avery so desperately need." I nearly choked on my coffee. You can't be serious, I sputtered. After everything you've done, you expect me to just waltz back into that toxic environment? Do you think this is easy for me? Loretta snapped, her composure slipping. Swallowing my pride and asking for your help? But Eli's spiraling, and I'm not getting any younger. If he keeps going down this path, my entire legacy could be squandered. I shook my head in disbelief. Of course, it all came back to her precious legacy and control over the family fortune. Your greed is what got us into this mess in the first place, Loretta. Why should I trust you now? She leaned forward, her eyes boring into mine with an intensity that gave me pause. Because for once, my interests align with yours. We both want what's best for Avery. My breath caught in my throat at the mention of my daughter's name. It had been nearly a decade since I'd last seen her, just a young girl ripped from my arms by Loretta's manipulations. The thought of being reunited with her, of protecting her from the chaos Eli had created, tugged at my heart. You'll have a chance to make things right, Loretta pressed on, sensing my hesitation. To be the mother you always wanted to be, isn't that worth taking a chance? I searched her face for any hint of deception, but her expression remained earnest. Or was I just seeing what I wanted to see, falling for her lies once again? All right, I said slowly, my mouth suddenly dry. I'll do it. But not for you, Loretta, for Avery. A satisfied smile crept across her lips. Of course, dear, whatever you say. As she rose to leave, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that I was walking into yet another trap, one expertly laid by the master manipulator herself. But the prospect of reconnecting with my daughter, of offering her the stability and love I'd been denied, outweighed my misgivings. He's ruined, Mara, Loretta said, her voice low and urgent. If not for him, do it for Avery. And with those parting words, she was gone, leaving me to wrestle with the weight of my decision and the sinking suspicion that I was merely a pawn in her latest game. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, barely recognizing the woman staring back at me. The lines on my face seemed deeper, etched by years of heartache and loneliness. Was I really considering walking back into the lion's den, putting myself at Loretta's mercy once again? A soft knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. Come in, I called out, turning to see Grace letting herself in, a concerned look on her face. You've been awfully quiet since our lunch the other day, she said, taking a seat on the couch. What's going on in that head of yours? I sighed, sinking down next to her. Grace had been my rock through the darkest days, holding me together when Loretta's machinations threatened to tear me apart. If anyone could help me make sense of this tangled mess, it was her. Loretta wants me to move back in, I confessed, the words feeling surreal as they left my lips, to help with Eli and Avery. Grace's eyes widened in disbelief. After everything she put you through? Mara, you can't seriously be considering this. I have to at least try, Grace, I insisted, my voice thick with emotion. Avery is caught in the middle of their dysfunction, and I owe it to her to be there. Grace reached out, giving my hand a gentle squeeze. But at what cost to yourself? That woman nearly destroyed you once. Who's to say she won't try again? Her words struck a chord, dredging up memories I'd tried so hard to bury. The constant belittling and manipulation, the emotional abuse that had left me a hollow shell of my former self, all orchestrated by Loretta's cruel hand. You're right, I whispered, blinking back tears. She's a viper, and I'd be a fool to trust her again. Grace pulled me into a comforting embrace, and for a moment I allowed myself to be enveloped in her warmth and support. Maybe it's not about giving them a second chance, she said gently, pulling back to meet my gaze, but about giving yourself one. Her words hung in the air, their weight slowly sinking in. For years, I'd been defined by my past, by the pain and rejection Loretta had inflicted upon me. But what if this was an opportunity to reshape my narrative, to confront those demons head-on and reclaim the life I deserved? You're right, I said, feeling a newfound resolve stirring within me. It's time I stopped running from my past and faced it head-on. Grace beamed, giving my shoulder an affectionate squeeze. That's my girl. Just promise me you'll be careful, okay? I don't want to see you get hurt again. I nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. Don't worry, I've got this. It's time to show Loretta that she doesn't hold all the cards anymore. As I spoke the words, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, replaced by a steely determination. No more hiding, no more running. This time I would face my demons on my own terms and emerge victorious, no matter the cost. The imposing wrought iron gates of the Blackwood estate loomed before me, their intricate patterns casting eerie shadows in the fading light. Taking a deep breath, I steeled my resolve and pressed the call button on the intercom. "State your business," a gruff voice barked through the speaker. "It's Mara," I replied, my mouth suddenly dry. "Loretta is expecting me." There was a momentary pause, then a harsh buzz as the gate swung open with a groan of protest. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, willing my hands to stop shaking as I guided my car up the winding driveway. The sprawling mansion looked just as I remembered, cold, imposing, every inch a monument to Loretta's wealth and status. I cut the engine, the silence pressing in around me like a vice. "You've got this," I muttered under my breath, grabbing my bag from the passenger seat. Time to face the demons. The heavy oak door swung open before I could knock. And there stood Loretta, perfectly coiffed as ever, regarding me with a critical eye. "You're late," she said by way of greeting, her tone clipped. "I expected more punctuality from you, Mara." I bristled at her condescending tone, but bit back the retort on the tip of my tongue. "My apologies. Traffic was heavier than I anticipated." Loretta pursed her lips, clearly unimpressed with my excuse. "Well, come in then. No sense standing out in the cold." I followed her into the cavernous foyer, my eyes adjusting to the dim lighting and hushed atmosphere. Not a single thing had changed. The same antique furniture, the same austere decor, the same oppressive air of joyless affluence. "This house hasn't changed," I remarked, unable to contain the edge of bitterness in my voice. "Cold and full of secrets, just like its owner." Loretta whirled on me, her eyes flashing with barely contained fury. "Mind your tongue, Mara," she hissed. "You're here on my terms, remember?" I opened my mouth to respond, but the sound of footsteps on the marble staircase drew our attention. My breath caught in my throat as a young woman descended, her features achingly familiar. "Avery," I whispered, drinking in the sight of my daughter, now a beautiful young woman of 18. She paused on the landing, her eyes narrowing as she studied me with guarded curiosity. "So you're the one Gran's been going on about," she said, her tone laced with skepticism. "The big solution to all our problems." Before I could reply, another figure appeared at the top of the stairs. Eli. My ex-husband looked haggard and worn, his eyes rimmed with dark circles and his clothes rumpled. He regarded me with a mixture of surprise and wariness, as though I were a ghost from another life. "Well, well," he muttered, descending the stairs to stand beside Avery. "If it isn't the prodigal wife returning." Acid rose in my throat as I struggled to maintain my composure in the face of their blatant hostility. Squaring my shoulders, I met Eli's gaze head-on. "I'm not here for you," I said, my voice low but unwavering. "I'm here for Avery, to try and undo the damage you've clearly inflicted on her life." Eli recoiled as if I'd struck him, while Avery's eyes widened fractionally. Loretta cleared her throat, stepping between us with a tight smile plastered across her face. Now, let's not get ahead of ourselves," she chided, resting a hand on Avery's shoulder in a gesture that seemed almost possessive. "We're all family here, are we not?" Her words rang hollow, the false veneer of civility doing little to mask the undercurrent of tension crackling through the air. As I looked from Eli's broken form to Avery's guarded expression, I knew in that moment that Loretta had bulk. Well, truly met her match. This was going to be a battle, and I had every intention of emerging victorious, no matter what it took. The days that followed were a tense dance of forced civility and thinly veiled hostility. Eli avoided me like the plague, while Avery regarded me with a mixture of curiosity and wariness, clearly unsure what to make of this sudden reappearance in her life. Loretta, ever the consummate hostess, maintained a facade of familial harmony, but I could see the cracks in her composure growing wider with each passing day. Something was brewing beneath the surface, and I knew better than to let my guard down. It all came to a head one evening as I was making my way to the kitchen for a late-night cup of tea. As I passed Loretta's study, the soft glow of a lamp caught my eye, along with the unmistakable sounds of shuffling papers. Curiosity got the better of me, and I found myself drawn to the slightly ajar door. Peering through the gap, I saw Loretta hunched over her desk, a frown creasing her brow as she pored over what appeared to be legal documents. "This has to be airtight." This she muttered to herself, scribbling furiously. No room for error. I leaned closer, straining to make out the words on the pages before her. My heart nearly stopped when I saw the words "Last Will and Testament" emblazoned across the top. Of course. It all made sense now. Loretta's sudden invitation, her insistence on having me under her roof once more. This was never about reconciliation or righting past wrongs. It was about securing her wealth, using me as a pawn to control Avery's future. White-hot anger surged through me as the pieces fell into place. Loretta was up to her old tricks, manipulating everyone around her like marionettes on a string. Well, not this time. I'd been fooled once, but never again. Before I could stop myself, I pushed open the door and strode into the study, my hands balled into fists at my sides. Loretta's head snapped up, her eyes widening in surprise and alarm. "Mara, what are you doing in here?" "Cut the act, Loretta," I spat, snatching the papers from her desk and waving them in her face. "I know what game you're playing." Her expression hardened, the mask of false civility slipping away to reveal the cold, calculating woman I knew so well. "So you figured it out, have you?" she sneered. "Took you long enough." "It was never about redemption," I accused, my voice trembling with fury. "It was always about control, using me to keep a leash on Avery, just like you tried to do with me all those years ago." Loretta rose from her chair, her lips curling into a cruel smile. "Oh, Mara, always so naive, even after all this time." She tutted softly, shaking her head. "Did you really think I'd let some washed-up hairstylist waltz back into my family and undo everything I've built? This is about preserving my legacy, and if you can't see that, then you're even more foolish than I thought." I recoiled as if she'd struck me, her words cutting deeper than any physical blow. In that moment, I saw the true depths of her depravity, the lengths she would go to maintain her iron grip on our lives. "You're a monster, Loretta," I whispered, hot tears stinging my eyes, "and I'm going to make sure everyone knows the truth about you." Her laughter was like nails on a chalkboard, grating and mocking. "Go ahead and try, dear. Who do you think they'll believe, me or the bitter ex-wife with a grudge?" As she spoke those words, I knew she was right. Loretta had spent years cultivating her image, weaving an intricate web of lies and deceit. But this time I had proof of her true nature, tangible evidence of her manipulation. Squaring my shoulders, I met her gaze with newfound resolve. "We'll see about that, Loretta. This isn't over, not by a long shot." With the documents clutched tightly in my hand, I turned on my heel and stormed out of the study, my mind already whirring with plans for how to expose Loretta's true colors to the world. The battle lines had been drawn, and this time I had no intention of losing. The tension was palpable as Loretta's extended family gathered for her annual summer garden party. Elegantly dressed guests milled about the perfectly manicured grounds, sipping champagne and exchanging polite small talk while a string quartet provided a refined backdrop. I lingered near the refreshment table, nursing a glass of lemonade and scanning the crowd for any sign of Avery. If I was going to expose Loretta's machinations, I needed her granddaughter on my side. "There you are." Loretta's saccharine voice cut through the din as she materialized at my elbow, her perfectly coiffed hair and impeccable pearl ensemble a sharp contrast to the fire burning in her eyes. "I was beginning to think you'd skipped out on us and missed the chance to spend quality time with my favorite family," I countered, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Perish the thought." She fixed me with a withering glare. "Watch your tone, Mara. We have appearances to maintain." "Is that all you care about?" I shot back, unable to contain my mounting frustration. "Keeping up your pristine image while you manipulate everyone around you like puppets?" Loretta's perfectly sculpted features contorted with rage, her mask of gentility slipping. "How dare you speak to me that way?" she hissed, leaning in close. "After everything I've done for you, ungrateful wretch." "Done for me?" I laughed bitterly. "You mean like driving a wedge between me and my own daughter? Or using me as some pawn in your twisted game to control Avery's inheritance?" Her eyes widened fractionally, and I knew I'd struck a nerve. Before she could respond, a familiar figure emerged from the crowd. "Gran, everything okay over here?" Avery approached us, her brow furrowed with concern as she took in the palpable tension between Loretta and me. Loretta immediately plastered on a sickly sweet smile. "Of course, darling. Your grandmother and I were just catching up." I couldn't resist the urge to scoff audibly, drawing Avery's curious gaze. Seizing the opportunity, I pressed on, heedless of Loretta's furious glare. "Your grandmother's been keeping secrets from you, Avery," I said, my voice low and intense, "about her real reasons for bringing me back into this family." Avery's eyes flicked uncertainly between us as Loretta spluttered indignantly. "Don't listen to her lies, sweetheart. She's clearly unwell." But I was on a roll now, propelled by years of pent-up anger and resentment. Fishing the crumpled legal documents from my pocket, I thrust them toward Avery. "See for yourself. She's been plotting to use you to control your inheritance and keep her grubby hands on the family fortune." I turned to Loretta, my gaze blazing with righteous fury. "You used everyone as your pawns, Loretta, but this is where it ends." A hush fell over the gathering as heads turned in our direction, drawn by the commotion. Loretta's face drained of color, her perfectly composed veneer cracking to reveal the ugliness lurking beneath. Avery stared at the documents in her hands, her expression shifting from confusion to dawning realization as the truth sank in. Slowly, she lifted her gaze to meet Loretta's, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Is it true, Gran?" she asked, her voice small and tremulous. "Have you been lying to me this whole time?" For a long, agonizing moment, Loretta said nothing, her lips pressed into a thin, bloodless line. Then, with a sigh of resignation, she gave a curt nod. "I did what I had to do," she said stiffly, "to protect our legacy, our family name." Avery recoiled as if struck, shaking her head in disbelief. "You're unbelievable," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "All this time, I thought—" Her words trailed off as she turned toward me, a silent apology in her eyes. In that moment, I knew I'd won. Not just the battle against Loretta's manipulations, but Avery's trust as well. As the gathering dissolved into hushed whispers and furtive glances, Loretta stood alone, her meticulously constructed facade in ruins around her. The master puppeteer at last unmasked. The gentle tinkle of the bell above the door mingled with the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the soft murmur of conversation. I took a moment to savor the warmth and energy of the bustling salon, a contented smile tugging at my lips. "Order up for table 4. Avery's voice rang out from the small kitchen area, drawing a chorus of laughter from the group of regulars gathered around one of the cozy bistro tables. It had been 6 months since that fateful evening, when the truth about Loretta's schemes finally came to light. In the aftermath, everything had unraveled with startling swiftness. The strained relationships within the family, the tightly guarded web of control Loretta had so carefully constructed, all of it crumbling like a house of cards. Avery had been my fiercest ally throughout, standing by my side as I navigated the messy legal battles and bitter recriminations that followed. With her support, I'd finally been able to extract myself from the toxic grip of Loretta's influence, emerging stronger and more determined than ever before. And now, here we were, partners in more than just name, having pooled our resources to open this quaint little salon and cafe, a cozy oasis worlds away from the cold opulence of the Blackwood estate. "Incoming!" Avery called out in mock warning as she deposited a tray laden with steaming mugs and pastries on the table to a round of cheery thanks. I watched her work the room with a natural grace and warmth, effortlessly charming the customers as she topped up coffees and swapped friendly banter. In those unguarded moments, I could see so much of myself in her. The same resilient spirit, the same quiet determination that had carried me through the darkest days of my divorce and estrangement. "We're not just rebuilding our lives, Avery," I murmured, catching her eye as she circled back toward the counter. "We're reclaiming them." She flashed me a conspiratorial grin, sliding an arm around my shoulders in a quick, affectionate squeeze. "You got that right. No more letting other people dictate our story." Her words struck a chord deep within me, a poignant reminder of just how far we'd come. For so long, I'd allowed Loretta's toxicity and manipulation to define my narrative, to strip away my autonomy and sense of self-worth. But not anymore. This salon, this vibrant hub of warmth and community, was a living testament to our perseverance, a reclamation of the life I'd always envisioned for myself and my daughter. A life free from the shadows of bitterness and control that had loomed over us for far too long. As the afternoon stretched on, and the hum of lively conversation and laughter filled the air, I found myself stealing furtive glances at the framed newspaper clipping mounted proudly on the wall. The bold headline, "Family Feud Erupts, Blackwood Empire in Turmoil," felt like a relic from another lifetime, a stark reminder of just how far we'd come. Loretta's once formidable influence had withered in the wake of her exposed machinations, leaving her isolated and diminished, a specter of her former self. The vast fortune and legacy she'd safeguarded so ruthlessly had slipped through her grasping fingers, a fitting cosmic comeuppance for the suffering she'd inflicted. But dwelling on her downfall brought me no satisfaction, no sense of victory or revenge. As I surveyed the cozy warmth of the salon, my gaze settling on Avery's radiant smile, I realized that this, the hard-won bond between mother and daughter, the freedom to forge our own path, was the greatest triumph of all. No more pawns in someone else's game, no more victims of manipulation and control. Just two women, boldly authoring the next chapter of their lives on their own terms. And in that moment, awash in the contentment and possibility that surrounded us, I knew our story was just beginning.